Hey Health Junkies, Dr. Kraus here. Just wanted to jump in and let you know about a new feature that I'm adding to the podcast. It's the ability to ask me questions. I've had a ton of folks tell me that they would love for me to cover their questions on the podcast, so I'm going to do it. So each week I will be adding a couple of questions that I'm going to answer to each of the podcasts. And if it's a juicy enough question, I just may dedicate a whole podcast to it. So if you're interested in asking a question, head on over to my website at drjkrausnd.com. Check out a blue button on the right-hand side that says Ask a Podcast Question. Hit me up there. Or you can also access the button through my podcast notes, also on my website. So head on over there, ask me some questions. I look forward to answering them soon. All right, let's get on with the podcast.
Hey, Health Junkies! It's time for The Health Fix. Join your host, Dr. Janine Kraus, as she gives you a dose of what you need to know and do right now to take control of your health from the inside out, to rebel against aging, look damn good, fight stress, and laugh every day.
Hello, Health Junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Kraus, and today we're going to be talking all about something I call the itchy scratchies. And what the heck does that mean? It means a case of the itches. I have a lot of patients that seem to come into my office with this similar pattern of they start itching. Of course, they start itching worse at night, and so they're scratching. It doesn't allow them to sleep. The itching sometimes seems to have this weird habit of starting behind the ears in ladies and kind of coming down the neck and then going to the arms and legs and then the abdomen. And so it's this weird complex of how the itching kind of plays out. It also causes some itching in the scalp. And I have some people who just itch in their scalp, the back of their neck, and behind their ears. Then I have other folks who are itching in their throat and have face itches. And so all this itching has a common theme as to what the heck is provoking this. And so today I am dedicating this podcast to what makes us itch. So oddly enough, our bodies also have, or I should say our brains also have, this memory center that allows us to remember where we've itched before and situations in which we've itched. And so sometimes it's that phenomenon of we start talking about things that make us itch and then we start to itch. So full disclosure, I fully apologize if you start itching during this podcast. Oddly enough, I was itching while I was writing this podcast. So there you have it. Now, let's get into the specifics here. What the heck is happening with these itches? Well, one of the first things I want to talk about is that we have a foodie trend going on in the United States where different types of fermented foods are super popular and they're at every farmer's market. And I have some friends that they have to try every single type of sauerkraut and kimchi and this, that, and the other that is at all of these farmers markets. And in particular, fermented foods are very popular at farmers markets, even the sourdough breads and the yogurts and kefir. Well, anything fermented can cause an increased itch with us. So just keep that in the back of your mind while I'm talking through this podcast. The other big thing is that chocolate can cause itching. Tomatoes can cause itching, as can hummus. And we've got a lot of gluten-free flours and crackers now being made out of chickpeas because chickpeas in particular are higher in the histamine component. And so those guys can cause some itching. Wine, beer, and kombucha are all fermented and major itchers. Champagne, probably the worst of the itchy scratchies in terms of the liquids that provoke itching. Green tea and black tea also can provoke itching. Then, if I haven't completely ruined your dinner party ideas for appetizers, aged cheese, nuts, major itchers as well. And then to top it off, we have this diet fad right now. And I even talk about it too. I'm not even going to lie because it is popular and it's helpful, are the bone broths. And the issue becomes that bone broth soup is great, but unfortunately, it has a lot of high histamines because we have to cook it so long, but also because it lasts for days. And folks that have histamine issues, so the itchy scratchies chronically, so chronic itcher scratchers and rash folks, these bone broths are not the best option for you. You're going to want to go with a collagen protein because making all this bone broth, it's got to sit around. And any leftover foods are going to be high histamine foods because the longer a food sits, the more histamines it gets. And so unfortunately, a lot of our food fads right now, the fermented foods along with these bone broths, are causing some itchy scratchies in folks. And it sucks because these are great foods and they have great benefits. Unfortunately, if you already have a system that has higher histamines, or maybe you have genetics where you can't break down these high histamines, and I'll get into that in a little bit, you might have some serious issues. So let's go into this itch. What is the physiology of an itch? What is happening? So an itch is an interplay between your nerve fibers, so these are C fibers as they're known, some immune cells, and your keratinocytes. And these keratinocytes are your skin cells. Now, these three factors, the nerves, the immune system, and your skin cells, all work together to create the itch response. Now, if your immune system is on hyper alert, because either you have a leaky gut, so you're getting food molecules into your bloodstream, or you have a poor diet, you're eating crappy food that is getting across your bloodstream, and so all of these food dyes and preservatives and things that shouldn't necessarily be getting into your bloodstream or your diet for that matter are getting in there and causing an irritation, and your immune system has gone on hyper alert. The other big thing here is gut bugs. A lot of us are aware that we need to work to balance our gut bugs, but unfortunately we don't tend to realize that these gut bugs can be potentiated by some of our habits, such as drinking alcohol, eating too much chocolate, so sugary things. Also, the whole component of these ferments, these fermented foods, yes, they have good gut bugs, but those good gut bugs can really get into your gut and cause a huge histamine reaction. And if your digestive system is irritated, you're going to have a very hard time breaking down those histamines in your gut. So, big issue there. Now, itch impulse, what's happening? So those nervous system fibers are going to get agitated, and they're going to send a message to your spinal cord. And your spinal cord is going to send that we have an itch message going up the spinal cord. And I like to think of it much like as if you're at the bank. And you know how you give them money to the little machine and it sucks your money up this tube and goes to the person sitting inside the bank? Well, this is much like what happens in your body in terms of the nerves. They're like in these little tubes. And so your spinal thalamic tract, sounds really fancy here, but spinal thalamic, meaning going from the spine to your thalamus up in your brain, is what is going to take that itch impulse up to your thalamus in your brain. Your thalamus is your relay center in the brain. So it's going to relay the message up to your cortex, which is the area that you know when you see a brain and looks all kind of wormy. That's your cortex. And this is our smart area or our evolved area of the brain. Because in the cortex, we have to evaluate what we're going to do with this sensation. And we're going to take information from before. So, you've seen a mosquito, it might cause you to itch. You might have an emotion where you're angry and you want to get rid of that mosquito. So all of these things, sensation, emotion, your attention, your motivation, how you're going to react to this response is all in that cortex of your brain. Now, the other crazy cool thing is that your brain remembers itches and it remembers the situation in which you had an itch. So sometimes folks will come into my office and say, every time I go into this particular building, I get itchy. Well, were you stressed when you went in there? What's the situation around it? And oftentimes our brain and our nerves communicate in terms of, should we be more nervous in this situation? Should we be more alert? And itching helps us to be more alert. So sometimes this is the connection. Not all the time, but I'm just throwing it out there, and that it's this interesting thing that our smart brain causes us to have these particular responses, especially in a relationship to a particular location, emotion, and a memory. Now, the other part about memory and itching is that our nervous system remembers, in addition to our brain, where we've itched before. So if you had a chronic issue with itching and you had a rash in a particular area, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get that itch and rash in the same place every time you react to high histamines. So I have common places behind the ears, so common for a lot of patients, back of the neck, scalp, common areas that our body remembers as being itchy, scratchy places. And so when you get high histamines, you tend to get itchy, scratchy in those places. And so I can gauge a patient's reaction in terms of my treatments as to if these areas that have been their problem areas of where their body's remembered where it needs to itch and inflame are starting to go away. So think about that. If you have a place that you itch at chronically, your body remembers that area. And that area is more sensitive to the itch because those nerves have been sensitized. And the nerves that go into the spinal cord at that level also are more like on point, just waiting for something. Just could be a wind, could be your clothes, anything that touches that area to send that message up to the brain going, uh-oh, yep, itchy time. So something to keep in mind of if you have some chronic itchy, scratchy places. Now, interestingly enough, when we itch, it kind of feels good, right? It's this like, ooh, I like this. It's like, I don't know how to describe it other than you find an itchy spot, you scratch it, and when you finally get that itch done, you're like done with it, you feel so good. Well, why do you feel good? Your body releases, so your nervous system actually releases GABA and glycine. These are neurotransmitters that calm us. They're calming. And it's kind of cool because GABA in particular is a relaxing neurotransmitter that we often use to relax the nervous system in the brain and in the gut. And so it's cool that it's activated when you itch. Glycine is an amino acid that actually helps to calm the muscles in the area and the nerves in the area. And so the fact that we release that right when we itch is pretty cool. So that is your reward system for itching. You get a good hit of GABA and glycine. So what happens with these folks with chronic itches? Why do they need to keep itching? Well, like I mentioned before, we've got the peripheral skin is still irritated and it's also very sensitive. So those nerves fire much easier. But also we can get addicted to that sensation of GABA and glycine release. It's almost like drugs for us in a way. It's an emotional connection. So weird, but that's how we work. All right, so why do we get started with itching? What the heck is happening? Well, you can look at this on a twofold factor. One, there's a huge internal component in terms of eating foods with too many histamines, like I mentioned before, in terms of our foodie fads that we have at farmers markets and in the universe right now. But we also have leaky gut, so food molecules getting across in the bloodstream, initiating our immune system response, so our immune system's on hyper alert. But we also have a component of actual barrier issues, so issues on the skin directly. And one of the things that I want people to think about in terms of skin is that our skin on our face, our skin on our arms, and our skin on our gut, they're all the same basic factors. Skin on the scalp too, all the same basic skin in the mouth, skin in the throat. It's all the basics. They're all the same in terms of their function. They just have little adaptations that are different based on where they're located. But if your barrier in your gut is damaged, you get chances of food getting across, right? Leaky gut. And that creates an itching histamine response in the gut, but also can create the histamine response to the skin. Your skin directly that you think of your outward skin, if you have a decreased barrier, meaning you might be lacking a protein. There's a lot of research on a protein called filaggrin. It is a protein that helps with our structure, so keeping our cells together nice and tightly packed on our skin. But we also can have an issue with a decreased barrier in terms of fats, because if we have an imbalance of the fats on our skin, and in particularly known as ceramides, we can have issues there. Ceramides are like super huge ingredients in skincare because they help keep moisture in. They prevent wrinkles. So if you translate that from what we use on the face to other areas of your skin, it's the same. Your skin on your face is no different than the skin on your arm. They need to have lots of good fats on them. Same with your scalp. And in particularly, your scalp has sebum. Well, actually, all of your skin has sebum, but your scalp has the propensity to have an increased amount of sebum. And it's a fine balance between how much sebum, so how much of that oil is there, and how much it gets to the point where it's the tipping point where it builds up, and then now we have itchy, scratchy issues, and we have dandruff issues. So one of the biggies is our gut bug balance on our skin. And when I want you to be thinking about this, I want you to think about gut bug balance on your skin all over, but gut bug balance in your gut too. This is huge. If our gut bug balance is off in our gut, it's going to affect our skin. If our skin outwardly, so our outward skin, has a gut bug imbalance, that's going to affect us too in terms of rashes and itchy scratchies, but also it's going to allow for things to get into us. Because our skin on our outward of our body, it's there to protect us. It's there to protect us from viruses, bacteria, all kinds of fungal organisms too. And so one of the biggest things in a situation which I have a patient that has an itchy scratchy case, I'm always going to go back to bugs on the skin, bugs on the gut skin, because they have this intricate play with how we keep ourselves balanced. Oftentimes, Staph aureus, which is the bug that lives on us naturally, when in excess, we know it can cause staph infections. But staph can be part of the problem with itch. Yeast can be a huge problem with itch. If you've ever had a yeast infection on your skin, it probably was itchy. It probably was burny. That is same thing that can happen in your gut. But on your outward skin, it can be a big deal. When you have overgrowth of bugs on your skin, you get increased action of your immune system. So white blood cells are going to be increased, and they're going to trigger the production of more cytokines, which are more white blood cells, and they're going to increase inflammation, which is going to bring histamine, which is going to bring itch. And so one of the big things that I always look at when I've got a person with the itchy scratchies is we've got to make sure that one, their skin's hydrated, two, that it's protected. So making sure that you are putting oil, so you could put coconut oil on your skin, you could put whatever type of oil you want to put on your olive oil for that matter, on your skin to help with the epidermal structure. But you also want to make sure that your bugs are balanced on your skin. I actually have people putting probiotics onto their skin in some cases. And oftentimes when it's really itchy, scratchy, we use soil-based probiotics because the dairy-based probiotics that are common are going to cause some histamine release. So this goes for internal and external. Now, the other big thing, though, like out of everything with your overall skin is making sure that when you cleanse your skin, you're not overdoing it. A lot of our products out there are almost damaging to our skin. And that's a big deal because we don't want something that's too stripping. We want something that's moisturizing. We want something that doesn't have a bunch of toxins in it as well. So you want a clean product for cleansing your skin because a lot of these antibacterial products for cleansing the skin really wipe off our good bugs, but they're also taking some of our barrier, the good proteins off our skin. Hand sanitizer. Yeah, it has a great purpose, but it's extremely drying to your skin. And it messes with your balance on your skin. So keep this in mind. All of you out there who have the itchy scratchies, it means that your skin needs to be taken care of and moisturized. My favorite moisturizer really is using either olive oil, coconut oil, or I will often use something called Say Yes to Carrots, which has a great carrot seed oil. And it's simple. Very simple products are what you need to be thinking about. Those of you with the itchy scalp, now we might be looking at issues in terms of the breakdown of the sebum because we get saturated fats that build up on our scalp. And if those saturated fats are in excess, because we're not able to break them down. Now, how the heck does this happen? Well, we have a fungus that lives on our scalp, and this fungus helps us to break down the fats that build up on the scalp. And if that's out of balance, we're going to end up with an itchy, scratchy scalp. So the first thing here is to look at your products in terms of what you're using on your scalp, your shampoos. A lot of shampoos are not that great for your scalp. Dyeing your hair will cause imbalance to the oils on your scalp. So if you're going and getting your hair done once a month and colored and touched up, keep in mind that that is going to cause some issues for your scalp, and you need to really make sure that you're moisturizing your scalp. Another reason why I do tend to go back to using oils to moisturize my scalp. Now, the other big thing here is if you do have a chronic itchy scalp, there are some wonderful shampoos out there that are non-toxic that even have an effect on calming the itch. And we have a ton of research out there now that's showing that cannabinoid receptors, so CB1, CB2, are involved in the itch regulation response. And we could use cannabinoid infused shampoos to calm that response while you're working on building up your good oils on your gut and balancing the yeast. That being said, too much sugar, not enough fat, good fat in your diet can cause issues with your scalp in terms of how it produces fats and the type of bugs that live on your scalp. pH balance of your body is huge in terms of allowing for bugs to stay in proper balance on our skin. So if we are eating too much sugar, we're eating too much junk foods, a lot of processed flours, a lot of just frankenfood, we're going to have a messed up pH. So back to your veggies, back to your good fats, things of that nature. Now, of course, yes, I've kind of blown it out of the water in terms of telling you that ferments are not the best foods in this case. Well, and the reason being is because if you go and eat fermented foods in excess, I have some people that they're telling me they're eating like a jar of sauerkraut a day to help with their good gut bugs, but yet they're itching like crazy. I mean, we've got to work on that. So it's all about balance here. I don't want people to be listening to my podcast and me to turn into that, oh, don't eat this now, but this food's going to kill you. I hate that. I really just want people to be aware that if they have a certain issue, they might be overdoing it in a particular case. And going back to the basics to reset and balance the body is what's key to stop this itchy, scratchy condition. So let's talk about what causes these excess histamines. I already talked about excess histamine from the fermented foods, the kefir, all of those different things like your kimchi and the sauerkraut. Think about what's popular right now. Kombucha, huge. I have a lot of people drinking 2 things of kombucha a day, and I'm going, that's a little much. One kombucha drink a week, hey, sure, but we take things to an excess. We jump on and we're like, I'm going to go and have so many fermented foods every single day. Everything's going to be fermented. I'm going to drink kefir for breakfast, and I'm going to eat kimchi at lunch, and then I'm going to sauerkraut for dinner. It's just excess. Balance. It's all about balance, all about moderation here. So the other big thing about the excess histamines is that some of us have improper breakdown of these histamines. And there's something called diamine oxidase. It lives in our gut. It's an enzyme that helps us to break down histamines because our gut pretty much uses histamine as a neurotransmitter to regulate the amount of food we have, but also to regulate appetite. One big thing to keep in mind is that if you have high histamines in your intestines, you might not be very hungry. If you have low histamines, you might be super hungry. Not as a complete rule, but something to think about in terms of your body's trying to protect you from putting more stuff in the gut when it's sending messages of, I'm not hungry. Histamines are also in charge of causing you to barf. So there you have it. But it's something to keep in mind. It's a protective mechanism. And when we have certain responses, it gives us an idea of what's going on in the gut. And so diamine oxidase lives in your gut. It's an enzyme. It breaks down histamine. But if your gut is damaged, say you've got non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, so you're taking a whole bunch of ibuprofen daily, that can mess with the amount of diamine oxidase that you produce. Antidepressants can do it. Pepcid, Zantac, some immune modulators like Enbrel, anti-arrhythmia medications. I'm going to put a list in the resources. There's a lot of medications that can reduce the amount of diamine oxidase that you produce in the gut to break down excess histamines. Now, also keep in mind that this is a protective mechanism for us too, because foods, the longer a food has been sitting out, the more histamines that it creates. Fish can be extremely high in histamines. We know shellfish for its histamine response, but a lot of us don't think about just general fish like salmon, things of that nature. Those types of fishes, the older they are, the more histamine they have, the more irritating they are to your gut. Now combine that with, say you go to a restaurant and you eat some old fish and you already have a leaky gut and maybe you took ibuprofen earlier that day. Well, that could be the cause of an itchy, scratchy episode. So thinking about compounded response, that's the other big thing about itchy, scratchy issues. We're like barrels. We put more and more into our body, and then there's a point at which the barrel overflows. And that's the point at which the histamines in the body are not broken down like they should. We have issues with oversensitivity in this case. So keep in mind, like I was saying before, yeah, it's a cool fad that kimchi and kefir and all these things are popular at our farmers markets. And it's cool that we have chocolate and wine and champagne and all these different craft breweries. But when it becomes a day in, day out habit of compounding all these certain things, that's when your barrel overflows. So this is what I'm talking about here. Okay, so DAO, diamine oxidase, is in your gut. It helps to break down histamines. We have another component, another enzyme called histamine N-methyltransferase, HNMT for short. This breaks down your histamines in your nervous system. This guy can also be affected by the sure fact that we might have a genetic mutation. So we also could have a genetic mutation that might not allow DAO, diamine oxidase, to work either. So this is something that you would need to test if you suspect that, but sometimes I'll find that folks have a partial mutation to either DAO or HNMT, and they're good for a while, and then all of a sudden, holy cow, everything causes them to have a rash and itchy scratchies, and that's not cool. Or these individuals will be fine for a while, but then they'll get on a kick of doing wine every night with a little chocolate, or they get on a morning kick of black or green tea or yerba mate with their chocolate, or they're eating high amounts of nuts. The other big issue is high protein diets. Too much protein can also cause a histamine issue too. So yes, it might seem like I'm telling you that every single thing out there is going to cause issues with histamines. And for all intents and purposes, it's really just in keeping things in moderation. And unfortunately, we are creatures of excess, and that's what happens. But part of this podcast is really the public service announcement of, yes, we have some really cool things that are at our farmers markets. And unfortunately, a lot of us are going there and eating the sauerkraut. Then we are going to drink a kefir for breakfast, and then we're going to have chocolate for a snack, and maybe we got some fresh strawberries and tomatoes at the farmer's market, and we ate all that in the same day, and then boom, why do we have the rash the next day? By the way, tomato season and pepper season is probably in the fall is one of the biggest seasons where I see itchy scratchies as well, because a lot of times we'll keep our histamines in check, but then we'll be like, tomatoes, they're in season, let's eat as many as we can, or my garden's producing so many of them, I don't know what to do. That's also another big provoker for why itchy scratchy stuff happens. So moral of the story for today is really looking at what have you been eating and what kind of habits have you been getting into, and by any chance did your itchy scratchy episode coincide with a new diet trend, something that you've been eating in excess because you freaking love it. Just put that in a perspective for yourself and see if that is a possibility. Okay. Other things to do if you have the itchy scratchies. Now, I talked about the cannabinoid receptors being amazing for stopping itch. So CB1, CB2. So this means your CBD types of creams and shampoos. This can be amazing for helping topically and for scalp stuff. Capsaicin, this is cayenne pepper. Menthol, those two also great topicals to stop an itch. My favorite menthol is Dr. Bob's medicated oil. Love it. I'll put it in the resources. Capsaicin, there's so many types of products out there. You could get any of them and try them and see what you think. I also think that to stop a histamine reaction, you've got to have a little bit of things that block histamine. My favorite is Histablock by Nature's Sunshine or His-Ease by Designs for Health. These have nettles and quercetin. Nettles and quercetin stop excess histamine production. You could also buy nettle tea and switch from your black and green tea if you've got a habit or a yerba mate habit, because remember, those are high in histamine. You could switch to nettle tea and calm stuff down there. Other biggie, soil-based probiotic. If you're taking a regular dairy-based probiotic and it coincided with your rash, I would switch to a soil-based probiotic. If you've been taking your probiotic that is not a soil-based probiotic and you were fine for a long time, I don't worry about that. I don't want you to switch your gut bug stuff. Only if you notice that you took a probiotic and it started or set off a histamine reaction do I want you to stop and switch to a soil-based probiotic. If you're not taking a probiotic, take a soil-based probiotic. My favorite is Prescript Assist. It'll be in the resources. Big thing with itchy scratchies is improving gut health. You really want to have a strong gut. And unfortunately, bone broths have been the way that we've talked a lot about improving gut health. I don't recommend it for anyone that has a tendency towards itching and rashes. Get collagen protein powder. So vital proteins, collagen peptides, that's what you want. Don't start making bone broths because that'll make you worse. Now, another biggie is if we do have a gut imbalance that's pretty bad, you might want to kill it down. And I typically will use a product called Biocidin. It's like a 15-day protocol. You can kill those gut bugs down and then restart. Now, remember, while you're killing gut bugs down, you're going to have more histamines produced. So it's a trade-off there, but something to keep in mind. Another biggie is going to simple foods and a low histamine diet. A lot of times I will have folks make soup daily, and the reason there's no leftovers in this protocol is because the more something is set out and it's been around longer, the more it has histamines in it. So keep in mind that you do not want leftovers when you're going with a simple food protocol. I also will use smoothies and keep them around too, especially if it's warm out. If it's cold out and you're trying to shut down the histamine response, I don't recommend smoothies. I am more towards the soup and gentle sautés for your breakfast items. Now, moving along, estrogen. Estrogen inhibits DAO, so that's the diamine oxidase that's in your gut. If you have too much estrogen in your body, you're going to have some issues breaking down that histamine. So a lot of ladies have PMS. A lot of ladies have migraines before their periods. This is oftentimes an estrogen dominance issue. You want to go back to cleaning out all your phytoestrogens, so get rid of soy in your diet, get rid of soy sauce, and really look at what you're cooking with. Get rid of your Teflon pans, any types of xenoestrogens. Don't heat plastic up. All those things cause xenoestrogens. Increase your progesterone. Because if you are getting rid of estrogen, you're wanting to boost your progesterone, then that can help you to balance your hormones a little bit. And really, yes, you could take evening primrose oil and you could do all those things. You could do Vitex, which is chasteberry, to increase progesterone. But really, if you get rid of extra estrogen, sometimes your progesterone comes back on its own. Also, stress is going to decrease progesterone. So if you're super stressed, you might want to consider working on that. Maca is amazing for increasing progesterone and helping balancing things out. However, when you have the itchy scratchies, more supplements usually don't help. You really just want your gut to chill out. So my number one recommendation before you start going on the route of trying to do supplements to balance your hormones, use cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, not in a fermented manner, just in their straight up natural state. Use those guys and, get those like a cup or two a day. And that's going to reduce estrogen in the body. Yes, diindolylmethane DIM is a supplement to reduce estrogen as well. But at this point, if you got the itchy scratchies, it's best to work on balancing the hormones. with food first. Then you can get into the supplements once your rash has gone down and the itch has gone down. Blood sugar, huge. Gotta balance the blood sugar. You do not want to be feeding yeast in your gut or on your skin, because the more yeast and the more sugars you get in the body, the more it's going to mess with your gut bug balance. Cut yourself off of the sugar or reduce it down as much as you possibly freaking can, because that is a biggie. And same thing goes with eating too much fruit. 1 or 2 servings a day, fine, but after that, you're putting too much sugar into the body. Obviously, I've said it before, reduce stress, that's huge. We know that. Really stabilizing your adrenal glands, because there's a huge connection with the amount of histamine that you release and how stressed you are. Number one way to work on stress is to breathe. Literally 5 count inhale, 7 count exhale. Do it 5 times. Do it as much as you can throughout the day. When you're feeling stressed, you will find that you feel a lot more chill. The other big thing is don't forget to enjoy life. You got to do what you want. You got to do, you got to get out there and enjoy life. If you right now are hating on life and you're not happy and you got the itchy scratchies, you need to work in your most favorite things somehow within the day to give you some joy. So go get that joy in life. Other biggie, reduce other allergens in your life. New pillows. You should swap out pillows. I literally think everyone should swap out their pillows every 2 years. Put a dust mite cover on it. Put a dust mite cover on your mattress. Clean your home regularly. If you've got the itchy scratchies, it is well worth the money to get someone in to clean your home. Make sure that they're green cleaners, that they're not using a bunch of toxic agents. But all that dust, all that clutter in the house is causing issues for you. Trust me. You clean it out, you get things simplified. It's amazing how much you will feel better. Get rid of synthetic air fresheners. Freaking Glade stuff is toxic. It's bad for you. It smells nice, but it's bad for you. Seriously. Also, take a look at the perfumes you're using. See if they are good quality perfumes in terms of not using icky stuff in them. That's another biggie. I don't know how many people that come into my office who have the itchy scratchies that they have such strong perfume and it's not helping them. Bath and Body Works crap, all that stuff. Sorry, Bath and Body Works. Clean up your products, then I'll like you. But seriously, all the stuff that you're putting on your skin that smells, that has toxic ingredients, is bad for you. It's going to cause itchy scratchies and make things worse. Same thing with all those synthetic air fresheners. Ugh, get rid of them. Just trash them. The other biggie is if you do all of the above that I've just recommended and you still are itchy scratchy, you want to get genetic testing for mutations against HNMT, so histamine N-methyltransferase, and DAO, diamine oxidase, and also MTHFR. So that's that methylation one I've talked about before if you've listened to any of my podcasts. MAO is another one, that's monoamine oxidase. That is another biggie. Those 4 mutations can be what's happening in terms of your issues. So in my resources, I am going to list all of the different steps you need to take to help to reduce histamines in your life, but also I'm going to mention all of the different things that you should be looking for in your perfumes and topicals, such as your lotions and things of that nature, and make sure that those are not in there. You want clean products. You want to don't want to be adding all this junk to yourself. It doesn't help in your barrel. You want to keep that barrel as clean as possible. That way it doesn't overflow. All right, so that's the moral of the story today. Keep your barrel clean. Do not let it overflow. Don't fall into the trends that are popular right now in terms of consumption of ridiculous amounts of bone broth, ridiculous amounts of sauerkraut or kimchi or kefir or yogurt. Everything in moderation, people. And I think that maybe we don't even know what moderation is anymore, but the idea is once or twice a week. That's great. But every single day and multiple things every day, tone it down. Tone it down. So there you have it. You've survived another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning into The Health Fix, the podcast all about taking control of your health, rebelling against aging, and having fun every day. A lot of patients ask me, do you think I'm aging too fast? So, I created an evaluation checklist for you to see for yourself. Plus, I created a resource guide to help you slow down the aging process right now. You can find it for free on my website, drjkrausnd.com. If you like this podcast, help get the word out to others by liking it and rating it. If you'd like more natural health tips and want to join our Facebook community where I interact daily, click on the Join Group button on our website at drjkrausnd.com.